The morning air in Mexico City feels heavy on July 4th, 1997. A sleek black Mercedes quietly pulls up to the exclusive entrance of Santa Monica Hospital. A completely ordinary-looking man steps out into the early dawn light. He possesses the kind of unremarkable face you would instantly forget 5 seconds after seeing it. However, this middle-aged patient is actually the single most wanted criminal on the entire planet. His true name is Amado Carrillo Fuentes, and his criminal empire defies human comprehension. His estimated personal net worth sits at an astonishing $25 billion. He successfully moved significantly more pure cocaine across the globe than Pablo Escobar ever touched. He controls a massive fleet of commercial aircraft that earned him a terrifying nickname whispered across 2 continents. They call him the Lord of the Skies. Today, he is secretly checking into this private medical facility using a completely false identity. His heavily armed bodyguards rapidly secure the entire hospital floor to ensure total privacy. For the next 8 hours, elite surgeons will meticulously reshape his entire face and reconstruct his jaw. They will violently extract 30 pounds of fat from his body. He is a billionaire drug lord willing to literally become someone else to escape capture. He desperately wants a brand new face to guarantee a brand new life hidden in the shadows. At exactly 6:47 in the morning, the heavy anesthesia finally takes hold of his body. The sterile surgical lights glare down as the first precise scalpel cuts into his skin. For 7 exhausting hours, everything proceeds exactly according to their meticulous medical plan. A new identity slowly begins taking shape on the operating table. The medical machines beep with a steady and reassuring rhythm throughout the long afternoon. His heart rate remains perfectly normal, and his blood pressure stays completely stable. Then the situation shifts rapidly. At exactly 3:02 in the afternoon, the heart monitor suddenly spikes. Just 7 minutes later, his blood pressure begins dropping at a terrifying speed. Frantic alarms start screaming from deep inside the locked operating room. Voices erupt in pure chaos as the surgical team charges the defibrillator. The distinct whine of the medical machine fills the room, followed by a heavy shock. The doctors realize they are rapidly losing the most dangerous man in the world. These elite surgeons are not simply panicking about losing a wealthy patient. They deeply understand that if Amado Carrillo Fuentes dies on this table, their own lives are instantly forfeit. You do not simply fail the most powerful drug lord in history and walk away safely. You do not lose a $25 billion asset and expect to ever go home to your family again. A surgeon screams with genuine terror echoing in his voice. He is fighting for his own survival just as much as his patient. Then at exactly 3:17 in the afternoon, the monitor goes entirely flat. A deafening silence briefly fills the room before total chaos finally erupts. The loyal bodyguards violently burst through the heavy doors with their weapons drawn, but their deadly guns are completely useless against a failing biological system. Their legendary boss lies motionless on the bloody table with his face utterly destroyed and reconstructed. The desperate doctors continue frantic chest compressions while sweat pours down their terrified faces. The official story will later claim it was a catastrophic heart failure or perhaps an accidental anesthesia overdose. The medical narrative will constantly shift depending on who is asking the questions. But one glaring detail remains completely unexplained to this day. His own heavily armed bodyguards were standing just steps away watching the entire procedure unfold. They heard the frantic alarms screaming and watched their boss slowly dying. Those loyal men stood frozen and did absolutely nothing to intervene when the monitors first spiked. They never pulled their weapons to force the medical team to try different life-saving measures. Those disturbing questions never receive any logical answers from the cartel. Within a few short hours, the bruised and deformed body is quietly transported directly to the local morgue. Within days, the corpse is rapidly buried without any public viewing. Almost immediately after the dirt covers the casket, people incredibly close to Amado start whispering the impossible. The men who built his empire look at the leaked photographs and realize something is deeply wrong. They whisper that the man rotting in that grave is absolutely not the Lord of the Skies. This single moment sparks one of the greatest and most terrifying unsolved mysteries in the entire history of organized crime. The aftermath will reveal horrific clues suggesting the ultimate disappearing act was successfully executed. The world will soon discover murdered doctors sealed permanently inside heavy concrete drums. Investigators will find a bizarre toy airplane traveling across international borders completely on its own. They will examine a corpse displaying the wrong scars and the wrong skin tone. The undeniable evidence suggests Amado Carrillo Fuentes faked his own death perfectly. Let us rewind the clock to December 1956, in the small agricultural town of Guamuchilito. This dusty corner of Sinaloa in Mexico has a total population of barely 3,000 people. A young boy stares at his exhausted parents and 10 siblings crowded inside their tiny farmhouse. He sees crushing poverty everywhere he looks. He sees absolutely no future in these endless fields of dust and generational struggle. Amado Carrillo Fuentes is only 11 years old when he makes a profound and irreversible decision. He possesses only a 6th-grade education and a stubborn belief in his own destiny. He completely abandons his struggling family farm and walks away toward an incredibly uncertain future. He vows to become richer than most developing countries. His family cannot possibly comprehend the dark path he just started walking down. His uncle Ernesto Fonseca Carrillo runs massive illegal operations for the infamous Guadalajara Cartel. This is not a typical family connection offering a quiet job in a local factory. This is an elite criminal university offering advanced courses in global smuggling. Amado instantly becomes their absolute star student. While other young men learn honest trades, he learns complex logistics and calculated violence. He learns the invaluable art of remaining completely invisible. The ruthless Guadalajara Cartel teaches him the lucrative cocaine business from the ground up. He masters the complex supply routes stretching deep into the jungles of Colombia. He maps out sophisticated distribution networks spreading across major American cities. He perfectly understands the intricate bribery systems reaching from street cops to top government ministers. But Amado does not simply learn their traditional lessons. He completely revolutionizes the entire global industry. By the late 1980s, most dominant traffickers are still moving their product using slow trucks and small boats. These traditional methods are incredibly risky and severely limited in their total cargo capacity. Even the legendary Pablo Escobar struggles with moving a few hundred kilos in tiny submarines. Amado stares up at the empty sky and sees a massive opportunity written in the clouds. He decides to buy an actual airline. He does not simply purchase one small plane or hire a few freelance pilots. In the early 1990s, Amado completely breaks the rules of international smuggling. He acquires a massive fleet consisting of 30 Boeing commercial aircraft. Each massive plane is capable of carrying exactly 6 tons of pure Colombian cocaine. He stops moving product in mere kilograms and begins transporting his cargo in massive tons per flight. You must understand the staggering mathematics behind this unprecedented aerial operation. One single Boeing aircraft carries 6,000 kilograms of pure narcotic product. The street value of that one specific flight landing in America exceeds $100 million. Amado is flying 30 of these massive aircraft simultaneously. In a single 48-hour window, he can successfully move 25 tons of product across the international border. That specific operational volume generates $500 million in just 2 days. This is significantly more money than most human beings will ever see in 1,000 lifetimes. He executes this exact logistical miracle every single week without fail. He lands these massive planes on remote dirt airstrips hidden inside friendly neighboring countries. He rotates his highly paid pilots constantly so no single person understands the entire network. His brilliant flight plans deliberately bend around known military radar coverage zones. In massive private hangars, his workers repackage the incoming cargo with the terrifying efficiency of a modern assembly line. When severe weather or heavy government surveillance pushes back against his operation, he simply adapts. His fleet flies lower and later and utilizes stranger routes to evade detection. He dominates the sky with absolute and terrifying control. By 1997, Amado Carrillo Fuentes reaches a staggering estimated net worth of $25 billion. This is not simply successful drug dealer money. This is literal nation-state money, capable of altering global politics. However, being the richest criminal in human history brings an entirely new level of danger. Every single intelligence agency on Earth desperately wants to find him and destroy his empire. Most traditional crime bosses respond to this massive pressure by surrounding themselves with private armies. They build massive, heavily armed compounds and violently challenge the local authorities. Amado understands that absolute power attracts devastating attention. He chooses an entirely different strategy to protect his $25 billion fortune. The Lord of the Skies decides to become a completely invisible ghost. Amado Carrillo Fuentes understands perfectly that surviving at the absolute top requires more than just raw firepower. He realizes that actual invisibility is not a magical trick, but rather a highly expensive payroll. His physical face literally vanishes from all official law enforcement databases across the entire globe. Police files circulate constantly, but they never contain a single accurate photograph of the modern billionaire drug lord. When terrified witnesses occasionally describe him, the assigned investigators simply cannot agree on his basic physical features. He becomes widely known as the boss without a face in the dangerous criminal underworld. He is so incredibly invisible that professional killers hired specifically to murder him end up shooting the wrong man. They simply do not know what their extremely famous target actually looks like in person. This incredible level of total anonymity requires a massive and continuous financial investment. Amado freely spends between $2 and $3 million every single week exclusively on strategic bribes. He spends over $150 million annually just to keep important people completely quiet. He bends entire judicial systems and military structures entirely in his favor to maintain his powerful invisible shield. He ruthlessly buys influential judges and military commanders and air traffic controllers and local police captains. Everyone has a specific price, and Amado pays it without blinking or negotiating the high cost. His absolute greatest purchase is General José de Jesus Gutiérrez Rebolo, who serves as the top drug official. The very man appointed to hunt him down is actually on the cartel payroll for many years. The powerful general actively protects his secret employer while pretending to fight organized crime. He regularly shares highly classified intelligence and warns the cartel about upcoming federal raids before they happen. He intentionally redirects massive government investigations specifically toward the rival competitors of his wealthy boss. It is the absolute perfect defensive shield, making Amado feel completely untouchable in his hidden Mexican fortress. He builds a massive mansion featuring 6 luxury indoor pools and a giant playhouse for his young children. He constructs secret underground tunnels stretching for miles beneath a bizarre palace he calls the House of 1,000 Nights. It is a massive fortress fit for a dark king ruling entirely from the deep shadows. However, an unspeakable darkness and horrific brutality heavily define his incredibly successful reign. Amado ordered the brutal torture and execution of more than 400 human beings during his rise. You must remember the desperate farm boy who left his poor village with only a small dream. Money does not simply change a person, but completely rewrites their fundamental moral code over time. It rapidly replaces natural human empathy with cold calculation and extreme violence. He learned very early that extreme violence immediately equals respect in the ruthless criminal underworld. Respect rapidly translates to total control, and that control directly generates billions of dollars in pure revenue. Each bloody murder simply made the next violent act significantly easier to casually order. After the first 100 dead bodies, the horrific executions merely became routine daily paperwork for his massive organization. These ordered hits were absolutely never quick or clean assassinations carried out with a single silent bullet. They were horrific hours-long torture sessions, specifically designed to completely break a person before death. Bodies were deliberately left hanging from public bridges or dumped carelessly along busy major highways. Each mutilated corpse served as a terrifying billboard advertising the deadly cost of crossing the massive cartel. His cruel executioners frequently utilized terrible acid baths and hot blowtorches to extract information from screaming victims. Some unfortunate enemies were completely dissolved inside heavy chemical barrels until absolutely nothing remained of them. He weaponized pure fear because a quick and painless death is far too easily forgotten by rivals. A publicly displayed and mutilated body effectively prevents the very next betrayal before it ever begins. The most incredibly twisted aspect of this entire bloody reign is his own psychological perspective. He genuinely believed deep in his dark heart that he remained a fundamentally good and righteous man. He constantly funded local churches and built new schools in his extremely poor hometown. He distributed heavy stacks of cash directly to struggling families who were completely abandoned by the corrupt national government. When confronted by local priests about the horrific violence, he offered a chillingly simple and cold justification. He claimed he could never retire because thousands of poor families directly depended on his massive empire. He viewed himself as a generous job creator rather than a ruthless global drug smuggler. He successfully built a perfectly terrifying shield of blood and money, but every shield eventually cracks. In February 1997, the criminal world experiences a massive and completely unexpected earthquake. General Gutierrez Rebolo is suddenly arrested and paraded in handcuffs before the international press. The top anti-drug official in Mexico is exposed as a highly paid asset for the cartel. The brilliant billionaire who spent endless fortunes building the perfect political shield watches it instantly shatter into a million pieces. Overnight, the absolute most powerful drug lord in the world is left completely naked and exposed. Without his massive government protection, every single law enforcement agency on Earth immediately begins hunting him. The DEA and the FBI and Interpol rapidly coordinate their vast global resources to close the net. The invisible ghost who ruled the skies is suddenly the most visible and heavily targeted man alive. Amado completely panics and does exactly what any desperate billionaire on the run would naturally do. He frantically attempts to buy his way out of this rapidly collapsing and deadly situation. He secretly flies directly to Russia and offers massive fortunes in exchange for quiet political asylum. The powerful Russian government looks at his incredibly toxic global profile and immediately refuses his desperate request. He immediately turns his heavily guarded private jets toward Cuba, hoping for a safe tropical haven. Castro and his strict government absolutely refuse to grant the desperate billionaire any form of sanctuary. He flies to Chile seeking a quiet mountain hideaway but faces the exact same cold rejection. Foreign governments that quietly welcomed other wealthy criminals absolutely want nothing to do with the famous Lord of the Skies. He is simply far too famous and incredibly dangerous to successfully hide anywhere on the planet. He possesses $25 billion in pure cash, but absolutely nowhere left to safely run. His massive fleet of aircraft can reach any continent, but no country will allow him to land. The ultimate master of logistics finally realizes that his endless wealth cannot purchase any more borrowed time. Amado makes the absolute most desperate and terrifying decision of his entire criminal career. If his endless billions cannot buy him safe geographical asylum, maybe they can purchase an entirely new existence. The radical plan is incredibly brutal in its pure simplicity and terrifying required execution. He will confidently walk into a private hospital room as Amado Carrillo Fuentes and walk out as someone entirely different. This is absolutely not going to be a simple cosmetic procedure or a basic nose job. He demands complete and total facial reconstruction from a team of highly paid elite medical professionals. They must install heavy prosthetics to completely alter the fundamental shape of his recognizable jawline. They must aggressively reshape his eyes and painfully extract massive amounts of fat to change his entire body profile. Everything about his physical being must be violently altered and replaced with completely new features. He desires a brand new face and a completely clean identity to start a brand new life. He plans to completely vanish into thin air, along with his $25 billion fortune. It is the ultimate magic trick designed by a criminal mastermind who refuses to ever be caged. This desperate ambition brings us directly back to the dark morning of July 4th, 1997. It is ironically Independence Day in America, a day meant to celebrate ultimate freedom. Amado checks into the exclusive Santa Monica hospital, completely hidden under a newly forged fake name. His heavily armed security team ruthlessly locks down the entire medical floor to prevent any unwanted visitors. His highly paid personal doctors stand by nervously as the lead surgical team prepares their equipment. They meticulously prep the sterile operating room for an exhausting 8-hour medical procedure. The heavy anesthesia flows through the intravenous lines, and the legendary drug lord slowly closes his eyes. He fully expects to wake up as a completely free man, completely liberated from his own bloody legacy. For the first 7 hours, the bloody procedure goes exactly according to their brilliant master plan. The sharp scalpels cut deep into flesh and the new facial structures slowly take their permanent shape. The expensive medical monitors beep with a perfectly steady rhythm, indicating absolute biological stability. But the brilliant mastermind severely underestimated the unpredictable chaos of placing his life entirely in the hands of others. The frantic hospital scene completely ends, and the mutilated body is rapidly transported directly to the local morgue. The official funeral happens incredibly fast, with the casket sealed and buried before anyone can ask serious questions. The authorities officially declare the Lord of the Skies completely dead and hastily close the massive criminal file. However, the most loyal men who actually built his massive empire begin noticing terrifying discrepancies in the leaked autopsy photographs. The quiet whispers of an impossible conspiracy immediately begin spreading through the dangerous criminal underworld. His closest associates closely examine the morgue pictures, and something feels fundamentally wrong about the dead man. Amado possessed a very distinctive natural white streak running directly through his dark hair since his early 20s. The lifeless corpse lying on the cold steel table has completely dark hair without a single trace of that famous white streak. The terrifying inconsistencies continue piling up as more loyal cartel members review the final grim photographs. Amado carried very specific and highly visible childhood scars on his shoulder and forearm from a violent knife fight. The dead body features perfectly smooth skin, completely lacking any of those famous historical battle marks. Furthermore, the corpse possesses a noticeably darker skin tone and completely lacks a distinctive mole on his lower back. One missing physical detail could easily be explained away by the extreme trauma of extensive plastic surgery. However, 4 massive physical discrepancies point directly toward an absolutely chilling and mind-bending alternate reality. His own cousin publicly releases a shocking statement, claiming Amado is perfectly fine and completely alive. He suggests the cartel dragged a poor, unfortunate lookalike onto that operating table to serve as the ultimate human sacrifice. Think deeply about the terrifying logistics required to execute this incredibly dark and twisted master plan. Someone sharing a similar build and facial structure was heavily drugged and placed under the bright surgical lights. They endured hours of brutal cutting to make them look exactly like the most wanted man on Earth. Then the medical complications magically began giving the real drug lord the perfect decoy corpse to fake his own death. If Amado actually died during the botched surgery, an incredibly dark event exactly 4 months later makes zero logical sense. Highway police patrolling the dusty road between Mexico City and Acapulco discover several heavy steel drums abandoned by the roadside. They pry open the thick metal containers and find the 2 lead surgeons completely entombed inside solid blocks of concrete. They were brutally tortured, with their fingernails violently ripped out before being brutally strangled. Someone extremely powerful desperately wanted those specific medical professionals permanently silenced and completely erased from existence. A dead drug lord cannot possibly order the brutal execution of the very surgeons who accidentally killed him. This massive level of coordinated brutality suggests the surgery went exactly according to a much darker and deeply hidden plan. Those dead doctors knew exactly who actually died on that bloody operating table, and they paid the ultimate price. The final piece of this terrifying puzzle involves a very small and seemingly insignificant plastic object. Amado always carried a tiny toy airplane everywhere he went as a personal symbol of his massive empire. That specific lucky charm should have been discovered in his hospital room or resting inside his pockets. Weeks after his hasty funeral, that exact same toy airplane mysteriously appears at his secret girlfriend villa located deep in Chile. A dead man simply cannot transport a plastic toy across heavily guarded international borders completely on his own. Someone who fully understood the deep symbolic meaning of that tiny airplane deliberately carried it there. It was a brilliant and quiet message, sent to the absolute highest levels of global law enforcement. It was the ultimate mocking gesture from a billionaire ghost who successfully bought his way completely out of existence. The federal authorities aggressively dismiss all these wild conspiracy theories as absolute nonsense and completely close the case. They claim the DNA testing and fingerprint analysis perfectly matched within a remarkably suspicious 48-hour window. But true legends of the criminal underworld never truly die in the bright light of a sterile hospital room. The man who conquered the endless skies simply changed his flight plan and vanished into thin air forever.